The grand chamber of the Galactic conclave was silent as Ambassador Kirzet of the Vrax stepped forward. His blue-green feathers, once bright and shiny, now looked dull under the bright lights. His wings trembled slightly as he stood before the representatives of 27 spacefaring civilizations. The Vrax were a bird-like species from the planet Vraxia. They were known for their intelligence and skill in building things that worked with nature. But now, they faced a problem they could not solve alone. "Honorable representatives," Kirzet began, his voice translated into the standard language all could understand. "I come before you with urgent news. Our home, the planet Vraxia, is dying." On the large screen behind him, images appeared showing a beautiful world with twin suns. The planet had tall purple forests and great blue oceans. But then the images changed, showing violent solar storms and a world where plants were dying and the air was growing thin. "Our twin suns have become unstable," continued Kirzet. "The solar flares are destroying our planet's protective shield, what you call a magnetosphere. Our scientists estimate we have less than 5 cycles before our atmosphere is stripped away completely." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some representatives leaned forward with interest while others sat back with closed expressions. "We have tried everything," said Kirzet, tapping a small device on his wrist. New images showed massive machines trying to create artificial shields around small cities. "These measures only buy us time. They cannot save our world." His four-fingered hand closed into a fist. "We are not asking for charity. The Vrax offer knowledge in return, our advances in sustainable farming, and our understanding of building technology that works with natural systems. We seek partnership and a new beginning for our people." The chamber grew quiet again. The Vrax were not a powerful species politically. They had joined the conclave only 30 cycles ago. They had no military might, no rare resources that couldn't be found elsewhere, just their knowledge and their lives. One by one, the representatives responded. The Torans, tall beings with translucent skin that glowed with colored patterns, spoke first. "We regret that our world's ecosystems would reject Vraxian biology. The risk of cross-contamination is too great." The Mithran Collective, a species that had long ago merged their bodies with machines, simply stated, "Our calculations show that accepting Vraxian refugees would create a resource imbalance of 17.3% in our systems. This exceeds our acceptable parameters." The Daran Empire representative, a massive reptilian being in ornate armor, was more direct. "The Daran Empire finds your situation unfortunate, but not our concern. Our territories are not open to mass migration." And so it continued. Some spoke of non-interference policies, others cited economic concerns. Some didn't even bother to explain. By the time half the chamber had declined, Kirzet's wings had drooped noticeably and his head dipped lower. In the far corner of the vast chamber, at a small desk almost forgotten by the Grand Assembly, sat Commander Elena Reyes of the United Earth Alliance. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun and her blue uniform was crisp but simple compared to the elaborate clothes worn by most representatives. Earth was the newest member of the conclave. Humans had only been traveling in space for a few hundred years. Mere children compared to species like the Torans who had been exploring the stars for thousands of years. The United Earth Alliance held only provisional member status, which meant they could observe but rarely speak. The other species often looked down on humans. Earth technology was considered basic. Their ships were slower, their weapons weaker, their medicine less advanced. But as Elena watched the Vrax ambassador's hope fade with each rejection, something stirred inside her. When the last major power had spoken, most representatives began to leave. The matter was considered closed. The Vrax would be left to face their fate alone. Kirzet stood motionless, his feathered head bowed in despair. Elena stood up from her small desk and walked across the chamber floor. Several representatives turned to stare. Humans rarely spoke in the conclave and never without being invited. "Ambassador Kirzet," Elena said, her voice clear in the nearly empty room. The Vrax ambassador turned, his large golden eyes blinking, in surprise at being addressed. Commander Elena Reyes, United Earth Alliance. She introduced herself with a small bow, a human gesture that the Vrax returned after a moment's hesitation. I have heard your plea, Elena continued. And while I cannot speak officially without consulting my government, I believe Earth might be able to help the Vrax people. A few lingering representatives paused to watch this unexpected exchange. The Daran representative made a sound that might have been a laugh. Human, your species barely has the technology to maintain your own world, the Daran said dismissively. What could you possibly offer the Vrax? Elena kept her eyes on Kirzet, ignoring the comment. Earth may not have the most advanced technology or the largest territory, she admitted, but we understand what it means to fight for survival against overwhelming odds. If you're willing to work with us, with all our limitations, I believe the United Earth Alliance would be honored to offer the Vrax people sanctuary. Kirzet's feathers rustled as he straightened to his full height, about a head taller than Elena. You would do this? Even knowing that helping us might bring disapproval from the Conclave? Elena smiled slightly. Humans have a long history of doing what we believe is right even when it's not popular. She extended her hand, another human gesture. Of course, I will need to speak with my government, but I will advocate strongly for this partnership. After studying her hand for a moment, Kirzet reached out and grasped it gently with his four-fingered hand. In our culture, the Vrax ambassador said, his voice softer now. When someone offers help in the darkest hour, we call them Shirvak, Lightbringer. Thank you, Commander Reyes. The few remaining representatives watched this exchange, with mixed reactions before filing out. As Elena and Kirzet began discussing immediate next steps, neither noticed the Tauran representative lingering at the chamber entrance, observing them with complex patterns of light rippling across its translucent skin. The pattern, had anyone been able to read it, expressed both concern and something else, something that might have been curiosity or perhaps the first faint stirring of admiration. News traveled fast across Earth. Aliens coming to live on Earth, the headlines declared. Pictures of the Vrax appeared everywhere. People were both excited and afraid. Nothing like this had ever happened before. 3 weeks after Commander Elena, Reyes made her offer at the Galactic Conclave. The first Vrax ship arrived in Earth's orbit. It was not very large, just a diplomatic vessel carrying Ambassador Kirzet and a small team of Vrax scientists and engineers. On the landing pad in New Mexico, a welcome committee waited. President Samuel stood at the front, with Elena Reyes beside him. Behind them were scientists, military officers, and government officials. News cameras broadcast the event worldwide. The ship's door opened, and Ambassador Kirzet stepped out. In person, the Vrax were even more striking than in pictures. They stood slightly taller than most humans, with bodies covered in feathers that shifted between blue and green when they moved. Their faces had a bird-like quality, with large golden eyes and a small, hard beak. 4-fingered hands emerged from their wing-like arms. Ambassador Kirzet, President Samuel said, on behalf of the people of Earth, welcome. Kirzet bowed deeply. On behalf of the Vrax people, I thank you for your welcome. We come in peace and friendship, offering what skills we have in exchange. For your generous help. The formal welcome was only the beginning. In the days that followed, humans and Vrax had to figure out how to work together. It wasn't easy. Everything from food to air temperature to building materials had to be reconsidered. Dr. Maya Patel, Earth's leading environmental engineer, was assigned to lead the project to build a home for the Vrax on Earth. She was brilliant but impatient, with dark curly hair that she never seemed to have time to brush properly and quick brown eyes that missed nothing. We need to create a space where the Vrax can live comfortably, she explained to her team. Their biology is very different from ours. They need higher oxygen levels, different foods, and their body temperature is lower than ours. The team selected a location in the Utah desert. The dry climate was somewhat similar to parts of Vraxia, and the remote location would give the Vrax privacy while also making security easier. They called it Project New Vraxia, a massive biodome that would recreate the conditions of the Vrax homeworld. It would be a self-contained city with its own ecosystem. Vrixna, the chief scientist of the Vrax, worked closely with Maya. He was older than Kirzet, his feathers faded to a pale blue-gray. His golden eyes held wisdom and sadness. "Your design has a flaw," Vrixna said one day, looking at Maya's plans for the water recycling system. "The filters will clog after one rotation." Maya frowned. She had worked on the design for days. "Our calculations show it should last at least 6 months. For humans, perhaps," Vrixna replied, "but our biochemistry produces different waste compounds. May I suggest a change?" He showed her a design using biomimetic filters, technology that copied natural processes. It was unlike anything Earth scientists had developed. Maya was amazed by its elegance and simplicity. "This is incredible," she admitted. "How long would this system last?" "With proper maintenance? Indefinitely," Vrixna said. Not everyone on Earth welcomed the Vrax. Some people protested, saying that Earth should take care of its own problems first. Others feared that helping the Vrax might bring trouble from other alien species. General Harris, head of Earth's Space Defense Force, voiced his concerns at a security meeting. "What if other species see this as Earth interfering in galactic affairs? We're the newest member of the Conclave. We can't afford to make enemies." "With respect, General," Elena countered, "we've already made our decision. Now we need to make it work." Construction of New Vraxia faced many challenges. Human tools sometimes couldn't work with Vrax materials. Communication was difficult despite the translator technology. Timelines were missed, and costs grew higher than expected. One night, after a particularly difficult day when a support beam had collapsed, setting the project back by weeks, Maya found Vrixna standing alone, looking at the stars. "I recognize your constellations from our studies," he said without turning around. "That one you call the Big Dipper, and there is your North Star." Maya stood beside him. "Can you see your home star from here?" Vrixna pointed to a faint star. "There. It looks like just one star from this distance, though it is actually 2. Our binary suns. Do you miss it?" Maya asked. "Every moment," the Vrax scientist admitted. "It was beautiful once before the solar flares began. Our cities were built in harmony with the natural world. Our tallest buildings were grown, not built, using living materials that continued to change and adapt. We'll try to recreate some of that here," Maya promised. Vrixna turned to look at her. "Your species confounds logic," he said. "You lack the resources, the technology, and the unanimous support of your own people. Yet you persist." Maya smiled. "That's humanity for you. We're stubborn that way." Meanwhile, in Earth's capital, Commander Reyes received a message from the Galactic Conclave. She read it with a growing frown, then immediately requested a meeting with President Samuels. "The Conclave has officially censured Earth for reckless interference in natural evolutionary processes," she reported. "Several advanced species have suspended trade agreements with us. The Taurans have withdrawn their technology exchange program, and the Mithran Collective has canceled their planned diplomatic visit." President Samuels ran a hand through his gray hair. "We expected some pushback. How serious is this?" "It's not an immediate threat," Elena said, "but it isolates us further in the galactic community. We were already seen as primitive. Now we're viewed as primitive and unpredictable." The president looked out the window at the night sky. "Do you regret your decision, Commander, to offer help to the Vrax?" Elena didn't hesitate. "No, sir. Not for a second." "Good," he said. "Neither do I." Back at the construction site, the work continued. Human engineers learned to integrate Vrax biomimetic technology into their designs. Vrax scientists adapted their knowledge to work with Earth materials. Slowly, the massive biodome took shape, its transparent panels gleaming in the desert sun, and, in orbit around their dying homeworld, the main fleet of Vrax ships prepared for the journey to Earth. 10,000 souls, the first wave of refugees, were coming. New Vraxia had to be ready. What no one knew was that something else was coming, too, something that would change everything. 6 months had passed since the Vrax first arrived on Earth. The new Vraxia biodome was nearly half complete, rising from the Utah desert like a giant glass bubble. Inside, the first sections were already habitable. Small Vrax communities had begun to settle in, bringing with them plants and animals from their homeworld. Dr. Maya Patel stood at the control center, watching the environmental readings on her screens. The artificial atmosphere inside the dome was now stable, richer in oxygen than Earth's air, and scented with compounds that reminded the Vrax of home. The eastern section's irrigation system is now online, her assistant reported. The Vraxian grass seedlings should sprout within days. Maya nodded with satisfaction. Despite all the challenges, they were making progress. She was about to check the water recycling data when alarms began to sound. Unscheduled spacecraft approaching, announced the security system. Conclave diplomatic vessel requesting immediate landing clearance. Maya frowned. The Conclave had made their disapproval of Earth's actions clear. Why would they send a diplomatic vessel now? Commander Elena Reyes arrived at the landing pad just as the sleek silver ship touched down. It was much more advanced than any Earth vessel, a reminder of how new humans were to interstellar travel. The ship's door opened smoothly, and a tall figure emerged. It was a Tauran, one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall with translucent skin that rippled with patterns of blue and green light. It wore a simple silver robe that seemed to float around its body. Archmediator Loxan, Elena greeted the visitor, recognizing the high-ranking Conclave official. This is unexpected. Commander Reyes, the Tauran's voice was deep and melodic. I come with urgent information. President Samuels and Ambassador Kirzet must hear this as well. Within an hour, they had gathered in the Biodome's conference room. President Samuels had arrived by hypersonic jet from Washington. Ambassador Kirzet and Chief Scientist Vrixna represented the Vrax. Maya was invited to join as project leader. We come not as enemies, but as concerned parties, Loxan began, his skin pulsing with patterns that the translator identified as expressing serious concern. What you don't understand is that the Vraxian situation is more complex than it appears. The Tauran activated a device on his wrist, and a 3-dimensional hologram appeared above the table. It showed the Vrax home system, 2 stars orbiting each other, with planets circling both. The solar instability affecting Vraxia is not a natural phenomenon, Loxan continued. Our scientists have detected energy signatures that match ancient technology from the precursors. Precursors? President Samuels asked. A highly advanced species that disappeared roughly 50,000 years ago, Elena explained. Quickly. They're believed to have been the first spacefaring civilization in our galaxy. The hologram zoomed in on the binary stars, showing strange energy patterns connecting them. We believe the Vrax accidentally activated a dormant defense system while mining their outer planets, Loxan said. This system was designed to target specific genetic markers the Vrax carry. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. And you're telling us this now? Maya couldn't keep the anger from her voice. After their planet has been dying for years? Ambassador Kirzet's feathers bristled. This is preposterous. A fabrication to justify abandoning us. Loxan's skin darkened, showing what might have been embarrassment. The Conclave debated sharing this information when the Vrax first requested help. The majority voted that it violated our non-interference policy regarding precursor technology. Non-interference? Elena's voice was cold. Their entire species was facing extinction. The risk was deemed too great, Loxan replied. Interfering with precursor technology has led to catastrophe in the past, and now we must warn you. If the Vrax relocate to Earth, they may bring this threat with them. Vrixna, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. You believe this targeting system could follow us to Earth? We don't know, admitted Loxan. But the possibility exists. The precursor's technology operated on principles we still don't fully understand. Some of it appears to work through quantum entanglement, affecting connected particles across vast distances. President Samuels leaned forward. What exactly are you suggesting, Archmediator? The Conclave strongly advises that Earth quarantine all Vraks currently here and accept no further refugees until we can study this phenomenon further. Kirzet rose to his feet, feathers fully flared in anger. You would condemn the rest of my people to death while you study the situation? The first refugee ships are already on their way. I understand your distress, Loxan said, but we must consider the greater no. The single word from President Samuels cut through the tension. We will not abandon the commitment we've made. Loxan's skin flickered with surprise. You would risk your own planet? If there is a threat, Elena said, we will face it together with the Vraks, not by abandoning them. After Loxan departed, promising to report Earth's decision to the Conclave, the room was quiet. The hologram of the Vraks binary system still floated above the table, the strange energy patterns pulsing between the stars. Do you believe him? Maya asked finally. About the precursors? Yes, Elena said. The Taurans don't lie about scientific findings, but I don't think they're telling us everything. Kirzet had been studying the hologram intently. There is something I must share, he said slowly. Our ancient records speak of beings who visited our world long ago, beings of great power who some worshipped as gods. Later generations dismissed these as myths, but they might have been these precursors, Vrixna finished. Where are these records now? President Samuels asked. Most were in the Great Archive on Vraxia, Kirzet said sadly, but I believe copies exist in the personal library of Scholar Tirlay, who is among the refugees coming on the next ship. Elena stood up decisively. Then we have work to do. First, we continue building new Vraxia. The refugees will still need a home. Second, we prepare defenses in case Loxan's warning proves true. And third, when Tirlay arrives, we search those records for anything that might help us understand what we're facing. And if we find nothing? Maya asked. Then we keep looking, Elena replied. That's what humans do. We don't give up just because the problem seems impossible. For the first time since Loxan's visit, Kirzet's feathers relaxed slightly. When my people sought help across the galaxy, only humans chose to stand with us. Now I understand why. Your species may be young, but you possess something many older races have lost: hope in the face of the unknown. As they left the meeting room, Maya fell into step beside Vrixna. Do you think it's true that this threat could follow your people to Earth? The old scientist was quiet for a moment. I don't know, but I think Archmediator Loxan was right about one thing. There is more to this situation than we understand. The question is, what are we missing? Above them, through the transparent dome, the stars were beginning to appear in the evening sky. Somewhere out there, the first ships carrying Vrax refugees were approaching Earth, and somewhere else the twin sons of Vraxia continued their unnatural dance of destruction, perhaps guided by the hand of a long-vanished civilization. The race was on to solve a 50,000-year-old mystery before it claimed 2 worlds instead of 1. The first refugee ships arrived 3 days after Archmediator Loxan's warning. 5 vessels carrying nearly 2,000 Virax entered Earth's orbit. Most were families with young children, elderly scholars, and specialists whose skills would be needed to build their new home. Among them was Scholar Tirlay, keeper of the ancient records. Unlike most Vrax, whose feathers were blue-green, Tirlay's plumage was a deep purple, a rare color among her people. Her eyes were sharp despite her advanced age, and she carried herself with quiet dignity. Dr. Elijah Washington waited at the landing area inside the biodome. He was an archaeologist who specialized in extinct human civilizations, but now he had been assigned to work with Tirlay. He was tall and lean, with dark skin and a closely trimmed beard sprinkled with gray. Scholar Tirlay, he greeted her with the Vrax gesture of respect, right hand extended, palm up. Welcome to Earth, Dr. Washington. She returned the gesture. I understand you wish to see my library. Yes, we believe your ancient records might help us understand what's happening to your homeworld, and possibly how to stop it. Tirlay's gaze sharpened. Then we must begin at once. The scholar's library was modest in size but priceless in content. She had brought only physical copies, books made from a paper-like material derived from Vraxian plants, scrolls of thin, metal etched with microscopic text and data crystals containing scans of larger works that remained on Vraxia. These are the oldest records, Tirlay explained, carefully opening a metal case. Inside was a set of thin plates covered in strange symbols. They date back nearly 10,000 years. Elijah leaned forward, fascinated. Can you read this language? Not directly. It's Proto-Vraxian, but I have translations. She pulled out another book with parallel text, the ancient language alongside modern Vraxian, which the translator could convert to English. For 2 weeks, they worked together in a small research room set up specifically for this purpose. Commander, Reyes checked on their progress daily. President Samuels called for updates. Meanwhile, Maya Patel and Vrixna continued their work on New Vraxia, preparing for thousands more refugees who would arrive in the coming months. The breakthrough came late one night when most of the biodome was asleep. Elijah had been examining ancient Vraxian cave paintings that Tirlay had documented. The images showed bird-like Vrax ancestors standing before tall, glowing beings. These markings along the edge, he pointed to a series of dots and lines. They're not decorative, are they? Tirlay moved closer. No. They're an ancient calendar system, recording when these events took place. Elijah pulled up astronomical data that the Conclave had shared about the precursor era. He began comparing the dates, making calculations on his tablet. These encounters, he said slowly, they happened during specific alignments of your binary stars. The same kind of alignment that's happening now. Tirlay's feathers rustled with excitement. You believe these beings, the bright ones from our legends, were the precursors? Yes. And I think they didn't just visit your world. They did something to it and to your people. They called an emergency meeting. Despite the late hour, Commander Reyes, Ambassador Curzet, and the project leaders gathered quickly. Elijah explained what they had found. It wasn't a weapon, he concluded. It was a test. He shared images from Tirlay's records alongside data about the current solar activity on Vraxia. The patterns were identical. The precursors seeded dozens of worlds with special genetic markers, Tirlay explained. These markers were designed to evolve along with the species. When a species reached a certain level of technology, the markers would activate during a specific stellar alignment. Activate to do what? Maya asked. To trigger the stellar instability, Elijah said. Not to destroy them, but to force them to seek help. A test of compassion, Tirlay added. The ancient texts call it the Great Reaching, a time when a species must reach out beyond themselves or perish. The room was silent as everyone absorbed this information. You mean this entire crisis was engineered? Maya finally asked. The precursors designed your son to become unstable just to see if anyone would help you? Yes, Elijah confirmed. And according to these records, once the test is recognized for what it is, there should be a way to deactivate it. Vrixna, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. How? If this technology can destabilize a star, it's far beyond our capabilities. Tirlay opened another ancient text. The records speak of a device, what our ancestors called the harmony, that could calm the anger of the stars. When the bright ones departed, they left a description of it, saying it would be needed when the stars dance with fury. Elijah displayed the ancient diagram on the main screen. It's part precursor technology, part Vraxian engineering. It seems the precursors designed it so that only the combined knowledge of two species could build it correctly. Which means no species could pass the test alone, Elena realized. They had to find help, and their helpers had to genuinely want to assist them. Maya studied the diagram. We would need to build this device and place it at specific coordinates in the Vrax binary system. It would broadcast a frequency that would counteract the destabilization. Can we build it? President Samuels asked. Maya and Vrixna exchanged glances. The biomimetic portions, yes, Vrixna said. The Vracs have been developing such technology for generations, and the Earth materials should be manageable, Maya added. But this core component, she pointed to a complex structure at the center of the device, requires quantum technology that we simply don't have. Commander Reyes stared at the diagram. Then we need to convince someone who does have that technology to help us. The same species who abandoned us? Kirzet's tone was bitter. They acted out of fear and a lack of understanding, Elena replied. Now we can show them the true nature of the test, and maybe they'll realize they failed. The next morning, Commander Reyes requested an emergency session of the Galactic Conclave. The meeting would take place in 3 days. What if they still refuse to help? Maya asked as they prepared the presentation. Then we find another way, Elijah said firmly. The precursors designed this test to be possible. Difficult, but possible. There must be a solution within our reach. As the Earth delegation prepared to depart for the conclave, Tirlay approached Elijah with one final ancient scroll. I found this hidden within another text, she said. It speaks of the voice that calms the stars, a frequency that no single species can generate, but that can be created when different minds work in harmony. Elijah studied the scroll. This might be the key to the quantum core, not the technology itself, but how it's used. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Tirlay's feathers brightened with true hope. Perhaps that is the real test, not just whether one species will help another, but whether multiple species can put aside their differences and work together for a greater purpose. If that's the case, Elijah said with a smile, then humans have been preparing for this test throughout our history. We've never been good at agreeing with each other, but when we do work together, there's nothing we can't accomplish. The Galactic Conclave's Grand Chamber looked much as it had when Kirzet first pleaded for help. But this time, the Earth delegation did not sit in the far corner at a small desk. They stood at the center of the chamber, with all eyes upon them. Commander, Elena Reyes led the group, flanked by Ambassador Kirzet, Dr. Elijah Washington, and Scholar Tirlay. Behind them stood Dr. Maya Patel and Chief Scientist Vrixna, ready to explain the technical aspects of their discovery. Representatives of the conclave, Elena began, her voice firm and clear. We have discovered the true nature of the Vraxian crisis, and we come seeking your help to resolve it. Murmurs filled the chamber. Arch-Mediator Loxan leaned forward on his elevated platform, his translucent skin pulsing with patterns of interest. Elijah stepped forward and activated the holographic projector. Ancient Vraxian cave paintings appeared in the air above them, alongside star charts and technical diagrams. The solar instability threatening Vraxia is not random, he explained. It is a deliberate test created by the precursors 50,000 years ago. The chamber erupted with sounds of disbelief and concern. Many species held the precursors in near mythical regard. The idea that they had engineered such a catastrophe was shocking. Preposterous, shouted the representative of the Daran Empire. The humans fabricate this story to justify their interference. It is no fabrication. Tirlay's voice, though soft, somehow cut through the noise. She held up an ancient metal plate. These records date back 10,000 years. They document the visits of beings we called the Bright Ones, those you know as precursors. They show that this was always meant to be a test. The hologram changed to show the complex energy patterns between Vraxia's binary stars. The precursors embedded genetic markers in the Vrax DNA, Elijah continued. When the Vrax reached a certain technological level, and when their binary stars aligned in a specific way, these markers triggered the solar instability. But why? Asked the representative of the Mithran collective. What purpose could such a test serve? Kirzet stepped forward. To see if we would be helped. To test not just the Vrax but all spacefaring civilizations. To see if advanced species would extend compassion across boundaries. The chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. If this is true, Arch-Mediator Loxan said slowly, then the conclave failed the test. Not yet, Elena replied. There is still time to pass it. The ancient records show a way to stabilize the Vraxian suns. But we need your help to accomplish it. Maya and Vrixna took the floor, displaying the design for the stabilization device. This technology combines Vraxian biomimetic engineering with principles that humans understand, Maya explained. But the quantum core requires technology that neither of our species possesses. Specifically, Vrixna added, we need quantum resonators that can operate at the subatomic level, technology that we believe the Mithran Collective and the Torans have developed. All eyes turned to the representatives of these advanced species. The Mithran delegate, a being whose body was half organic and half machine, studied the design with glowing eyes. The theory is sound, the Mithran admitted, but deploying such a device near an unstable star system carries significant risks. The calculations must be precise. Even if we wanted to help, said the representative of the Daran Empire, how do we know this isn't a trap? The precursors were known for their complex schemes. Perhaps this crisis is meant to lure advanced technology into a trap. The debate raged for hours. Some representatives argued that interfering with precursor technology was too dangerous. Others questioned whether the ancient records were being interpreted correctly. A few suggested that the test had already been failed and nothing could be done. Through it all, the Earth delegation stood firm. Elena addressed each concern with patience but determination. Elijah and Tirlay answered questions about the ancient records. Maya and Vrixna explained the technical aspects of their plan. Finally, when it seemed they had reached an impasse, a soft voice spoke from the back of the chamber. I will help. A hush fell as a Mithran scientist stepped forward. Unlike the official representative, this Mithran appeared younger, with fewer mechanical enhancements. I am Zethral, quantum engineer, the Mithran said. The design you propose is feasible. I can assist with the quantum core development. The Mithran representative rose in protest. You speak without authority, Zethral. The collective has not approved this intervention. I speak as an individual, Zethral replied calmly. If the collective will not act, then I will. The principles of knowledge sharing upon which our society was founded demand no less. A stir went through the chamber. Then another voice spoke up. The Telonian Science Academy will contribute our expertise in solar physics. This came from a small amphibious being near the middle of the chamber, a species known for their deep understanding of stellar phenomena. One by one, individual scientists and engineers from various species stepped forward, offering their help. Some were openly defying their governments. Others represented smaller species who had remained silent during the original debate. Elena watched with growing hope as a coalition formed before her eyes. What had begun with Earth standing alone was becoming an alliance of individuals from across the galaxy, united by the desire to save the Vrax and, perhaps, to pass the test that the precursors had set. Archmediator Loxan watched silently from his elevated platform, complex patterns of light rippling across his translucent skin. Finally, he raised a hand for silence. I have served the Conclave for over 300 years, he said. In that time I have seen many disputes, many crises, many decisions, some wise, some not. But I have never seen anything quite like this. He descended from his platform and approached the Earth delegation. Commander Reyes, when you first came before us, I thought your species was naive. Humans are young, barely space-capable by our standards. Yet you have done what none of us did. You saw beings in need and you offered help regardless of the cost or risk. Loxan turned to address the entire chamber. The precursors test was not just about helping the Vrax. It was about whether we, as a community of spacefaring civilizations, have evolved beyond self-interest. The Conclave as an institution failed that test. But thanks to humanity's example, individuals among us are choosing a different path. The Toran's skin glowed with a pattern that the translator identified as decisive action. The Toran ascendancy will provide ships and quantum stabilization technology for this mission. Not because the Conclave demands it, but because it is right. The chamber erupted in a mixture of approval and protest. Some representatives pledged their support, while others withdrew in disapproval. What had been a unified conclave was now divided. But a new coalition was forming, one based not on political boundaries but on shared purpose. As the session ended, Elena found herself face-to-face with Arch-Mediator Loxan. "You've changed the equation, Commander," he said quietly. "Whether you succeed or fail, the Conclave will never be the same." "That wasn't our intention," Elena replied. "Perhaps not, but it may be the most important result of all this." The Tauran's skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "The precursors were clever indeed. Their test has revealed as much about the rest of us as it has about humanity." As the Earth delegation prepared to return home, a message arrived from President Samuels. "The fate of Earth is bound to that of Vraxia now. Come home safe, all of you." They had allies, they had a plan, and they had hope. Now they just needed to build a device that could calm an angry star, and they had less than 2 months before Vraxia would become uninhabitable forever. 3 weeks after the Conclave meeting, the stabilization device was ready. It looked deceptively simple. 3 silvery orbs connected by arcs of a material that seemed to shift between solid and energy. At its core was the quantum resonator, built with Mithran technology, but designed to interface with Vraxian biomimetic components. "Will it work?" President Samuels asked during the final briefing. "In theory, yes," Maya Patel answered. She had barely slept for days, working alongside scientists from 7 different species. "The Mithran quantum core will generate the frequency pattern discovered in the ancient records. The Vraxian components will amplify and direct it. And the human-built shell will protect it all from the stellar radiation." "In theory," repeated General Harris skeptically. "That's the best we can offer," Vrixna said. "We are attempting something never done before. The mission would require perfect coordination. 3 ships would position themselves at precise points around the Vraxian binary stars. Each would deploy a part of the stabilization device. Once activated, the 3 components would create a triangular field that would, if the ancient records were correct, reverse the solar destabilization. Commander Elena Reyes volunteered to lead the mission. "I made the original promise to help the Vrax," she insisted. "I should see this through." Ambassador Kirzet joined her team. "My people's fate is at stake. I must be there." The coalition assembled an impressive fleet. The Taurans provided their fastest vessels. The Mithran engineers who had broken ranks with their government brought their expertise. The Telonian scientists contributed their knowledge of stellar physics. Even a few Daran military officers joined, drawn by the challenge if not the cause. As the deployment team prepared to depart, a ceremony was held at New Vraxia. The biodome was now home to nearly 6,000 Vrax refugees, with more arriving each day. The remainder of their species, nearly 40,000 souls, were in suspended animation aboard large transport ships, waiting to see if they would have a home to go to. "Whatever happens," Maya said to Elena before she boarded her ship, "what you've done already matters. You've changed how species see each other in this galaxy." Elena smiled. "We all did this together. Now let's finish the job." The journey to the Vraxian system took 5 days at maximum speed. As they approached, the ship's sensors showed the deteriorating condition of the planet. The once blue world was now brown and gray, its atmosphere thinning as the solar flares stripped it away. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported the Telonian sensor specialist as they entered the system. "The instability is accelerating, almost like it knows we're here, or like it's reaching a critical stage," Kirzet suggested, watching his homeworld on the view screen with sad eyes. The 3 deployment ships took their positions, forming a triangle around the binary stars. Each carried one component of the stabilization device. The timing had to be perfect. The components needed to activate simultaneously for the field to form correctly. Elena's ship held the primary component with the quantum core. She would give the signal to deploy. "All ships report ready, Commander," her communications officer announced. Elena took a deep breath. So much depended on this moment. Not just the Vrax homeworld, but perhaps the future of cooperation among species. If they failed, the coalition might fall apart, with each group blaming the others. "Deploy on my mark," she ordered. 3, 2, 1, Mark. All three ships released their components simultaneously. The silvery orbs moved into position, seeming to hang unsupported in space. For a moment, nothing happened. Did it fail? Someone whispered. Then the orbs began to glow. Beams of energy connected them, forming a triangle. From the center of the triangle, a wave of energy pulsed outward, washing over the binary stars. At first, nothing seemed to change. Then, slowly, the violent flares on the stars' surfaces began to subside. The angry red prominences gradually shifted toward a stable golden glow. It's working. Maya's voice came through the communication system from Earth, where she was monitoring the readings. The stellar activity is decreasing. The magnetosphere is already beginning to regenerate. A cheer went up on all three ships. Kirzet's feathers fluffed with emotion as he watched the stars that had threatened his homeworld begin to calm. The precursors test, he said quietly to Elena. We passed it. Not just us, Elena replied. Everyone who chose to help passed it. Back on Earth, at New Vraxia, the gathered refugees watched via real-time transmission as their homeworld was saved. Many had resigned themselves to never seeing Vraxia again. Now, they would have a choice. Remain on Earth as part of the first permanent Vraxian human community, or return to their restored home. 6 months later, as the last of the stabilization work was completed, a formal ceremony was held at the Conclave headquarters. The Vrax were officially recognized as a species under protected status, with both Earth and their original homeworld designated as sovereign territories. The ceremony marked something else as well, the signing of a new treaty. Not just between humans and Vrax, but including all species who had contributed to the rescue effort. The treaty established protocols for cooperation and mutual aid. What convinced you to help us in the end? Kirzet asked Archmediator Loxan during the reception afterward. The Tauran's skin pulsed thoughtfully. For millennia, the advanced species of this galaxy have accumulated knowledge, technology, and power. But somewhere along the way, we forgot something important. It took the youngest members of our community to remind us. Ambassador Kirzet and Commander Reyes stood together, watching the diverse group of beings who had once been strangers but were now partners. When my people sought help, Kirzet said, only humans chose to stand with us. But in doing so, you showed others how to stand as well. That's an old human tradition, Elena smiled. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to take the first step. On the observation deck above the reception, Dr. Maya Patel and Chief Scientist Vrixna were unveiling their latest joint project, a comprehensive database to help identify other species that might face similar tests. We believe the precursors may have seeded many worlds, Maya explained to the gathered scientists. This database will help us recognize the signs and prepare to help. President Samuels addressed the assembly with a short speech. The true legacy of this crisis is not just that humanity helped the Vrax, or that eventually others joined us. It's the reminder that advancement without compassion is not progress at all. The precursors understood that, and thanks to our new friends, we understand it too. As the celebration continued, Elena slipped away to a quiet spot where she could look out at the stars. So much had changed in less than a year. Earth had gone from a barely noticed newcomer to the Conclave to a central player in galactic politics. The Vrax had gone from facing extinction to having two homes, and the rigid structure of the Conclave itself was evolving into something more flexible and responsive. Admiring your handiwork, Commander Reyes? Elena turned to find Zeth Ral, the Mithran engineer who had been the first to break ranks and offer help. Not mine, Elena said. Everyone's. But it started with you. With humans, Zeth Ral insisted. My people have been spacefaring for over 5,000 years. We became so focused on progress and safety that we engineered the willingness to take risks out of our society. You showed us what we had lost. As they talked, more species were arriving at the Conclave. News of the successful cooperation had spread throughout the galaxy. Other emerging species had begun to look toward Earth not as a primitive backwater, but as the birthplace of something new, a way of relating to other species based not on power or technology, but on mutual respect and willingness to help. In the end, humanity's technological inferiority had proven to be their greatest strength. Unbound by millennia of cautious protocols and rigid thinking, humans had retained the flexibility, compassion, and bold decision-making that more advanced species had lost. The precursors test had revealed a fundamental truth. True civilization required not just technological advancement but ethical evolution. And sometimes it took a young species to remind the older ones of what really mattered.